You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel. And we're going to be talking live in the studio, firstly to Rolf. And Rolf is, of course, and he's a regular visitor, the Communications Officer for the RSPB Swale, Kent. Rolf, it's good to have you back in the studio.
Always great to be here.
Well, I was wondering, Rolf, first, although you are a kind of regular visitor, it's been a while since you were last here, so I was hoping you could just refresh our listeners into your role and what you do around Swale and Kent.
Yes, I'm heavily involved with the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, meeting our public and doing a lot of advocacy work to ensure that our natural environment is protected and properly cared for, and that people can get out and enjoy it through our nature reserves and through the other wild spaces that we have, particularly in North Kent and the marshes, Dickens Marshes, all the way from Gravesend pretty much to Seasalter. Lots of good places people can get to, but also in South Kent, RSPB Dungeness, very different habitat with its big shingle banks, nice visitor centre and a shop. So really promoting those opportunities for people to get out and about and explore Kent on the wilder side of life.
Now, I know next, Rolf, you wanted to give us a little update on the Explore North Kent event, I understand.
Yes, this is something that's been put together by the Medway Swale Estuary Partnership, which is a group of organisations up here, and each year we tend to try and get a series of events, and there's some really good things coming up in the coming week. And so if people go on the website, and it's msep.org.uk, they can download the Mudlark, which, if you're not familiar with, it's a really good read, and it's a printed small booklet magazine. It's online as well on that web address, and in there is the whole programme. But some particular events, particularly on Sheppey as well, coming up in the week. In particular, a historic Bluetown on foot guided walk, which should be a lot of fun, and that's on Wednesday, and I think then again on the Saturday. There's also a little further afield over on the Hoo Peninsula, at our orchard at RSPB Northwood Hill. We will have a professional storyteller taking us out into the cherry orchard and around the nature reserve, sharing wonderful stories about past natural history and present. And we'll also have a local group called the Hand of Stabs, and they do some really amazing, wacky kind of sound effects. I mean, the last time I saw him was playing a bicycle wheel with a violin bow, and it all goes through amplifiers and things. So there's some really different opportunities being out in the countryside up here that I encourage folks to get along to, and that's all this week, and it's in the Mudlark on the MSCP website.
And I know you wanted to next update us on the birds' breeding season on the marshes, Rolf.
Yes, it's been quite a mild spring. I mean, winter never really happened, did it? It was very mild, and so rolled into spring quite early. The bluebells were out quickly, and so the birds are doing really well on the marshes, particularly the lapwing and the redshank, those important farmland birds which nest out on the grass there, and we manage our reserves especially for. And you may recall the last time we spoke, it was about our work at Great Bells Farm here on the Isle of Sheppey and trying to improve the habitat there. It was an arable farm that was turned into a grazing marsh by ourselves, the RSPB, under a contract to the Environment Agency. So this is the first proper breeding season since all the groundworks were finished. And it's great. There are 25 pairs of lapwing out there at Great Bells at the moment, and they've already got 19 of their little chicks away successfully, and that we have very strict targets we try to achieve, because if the birds aren't replacing themselves successfully, they're doomed, and the lapwing have seen catastrophic population declines in the last 50 years. So we're really excited that Great Bells is doing so well. Another beautiful wader, the redshank with its long red beak and red legs, are also breeding in good numbers down there, and a whole bunch of other ducks, the pochard, mallard, tufted ducks are doing well, and even some owls, so the little owls and barn owls, and we've had marsh harriers too. So really improve the richness of the wildlife at Great Bells. It's next door to the Elmley Conservation Trust Nature Reserve. So that's a habitat that's also doing very well for wildlife, and so they'll be able, and it appears are spreading into this new habitat for nature, and that's exactly what we wanted to see happen. So hopefully folks in their gardens will also be seeing that the swifts and the swallows are back, and that nature's doing well this year. But of course, the more they can do with planting nice flowers for the bees and the insects, that's all food for birds as well. You can do your little bit at home too, and it's all going to improve the richness of the wildlife we're seeing around the Isle and up here on the marshes.
And I know you next wanted to talk about the big picture photo.
Yeah, big picture photo competition. Now, this is something that's been funded by the government's investment in the local environment, something called the Nature Improvement Area. And the Greater Thames Estuary was the first of 12 improvement areas in England to be established. It was a competitive process, and working with Medway Council and other partners and with the RSPB, it was recognised through DEFRA that the Greater Thames is a special place for nature, and this brings money to invest in getting people out into the estuary to enjoy it and the wildlife that's there. So they put a little bit of money towards a photo competition, and we had lots of entries. This was an amateur photographic competition, and the winners and some of the runners-up are all on display on the light vessel 21, which I know is a ship you know very well. Yes, down in Gillingham. I've seen your artwork and sculptures displayed down there. So it's a really fascinating ship, isn't it? It's a great visit. It's at Gillingham Pier. It's a bright red light vessel that used to sit on the Goodwin Sands, and the owners, Pavey and Gary, great couple, have turned it into a wonderful art gallery and exhibition space. And you can go along this week all the way up until the 31st of May and see these beautiful pictures that people have taken, different categories, wildlife, landscape, celebrating the Greater Thames. So that's one nautical event that's coming up. And another one I'll share with you is quite special, is at the historic dockyard in Chatham, and that's on the 7th of June. If you get on their website, you can buy tickets for a special talk by polar explorer Tim Jarvis, who reenacted Shackleton's great journey from Antarctica up to South Georgia when his ship sunk nearly 100 years ago, and he went on a rescue mission to save his crew. And the replica vessel, a tiny little boat that he and his 5 colleagues rowed across the Antarctic Ocean, will be on display, and he will be giving a lecture about this amazing recreation of Ernest Shackleton that they managed to do and survived hurricanes and all sorts last year. So that's the 7th of June at Chatham. So there's 2 lovely nautical themed activities, the light vessel 21 down at Gillingham this week, and on the 7th of June down at Chatham, this great story by Tim Jarvis. It's £10 a ticket, and it's held in the Dockyard Church, which in itself is quite an interesting building if you've never been in there before. It's not on the normal tour. This is a chance to go in and see that and re-experience what it was like 100 years ago to be out on the oceans in Antarctica.
So I know you next want to talk about butterflies and dragonflies, and talk a little bit more about that, I think.
Yeah, because it's warm. I know it's raining now. Typical bank holiday, isn't it? Weekend. It's chucking it down. But it's really warm and lovely out there, and that's great for insects. And so we often think it's all about the birds and spotting the birds. But in fact, insects are a really easy thing to get into for kids, young families especially. And I think dragonflies and damselflies are particularly overlooked, but they're really attractive. They're quite easy to find around ponds and wet habitats. And there's only 54 different kinds in the UK. And they come in gorgeous different colours, bright reds, bright blues, black striped, yellow, golden, black striped. And the damselflies are little ones. They fold their wings along their backs, and the big dragonflies, they perch with their wings sticking out sideways. They're really quite large, and you can watch them hawking up and down along waterways, catching smaller insects. They're quite dramatic hunters, really. They're reeling through the skies, catching smaller prey. And so I just encourage people to get out and actually maybe give that a go this year. It's a bit of fun, and then get onto the websites and identify the species that you've found. And likewise with the butterflies, again, only 59 different kinds of butterflies in the UK, and we're coming into that great time of year to see them. So why not have a go at seeing the ones you can recognise? They're usually quite easy. They're all quite distinct from each other in their wing patterns, and they also like to live on different plants. So as you move through the countryside, you'll see the butterflies change with the flowers. So why not get out this spring and summer and turn your eye to the butterflies and the other flying insects, the dragonflies and damselflies, and see how many you can find this year.
And we're talking to Rolf, the Communications Officer for the RSPB Swale, Kent. And I know next you wanted to give us an update on local threats to wildlife development.
Yes, as ever, the Thames estuary being in the southeast, there's a threat of development. It's a crowded place already, but always the need for, or perceived need for more industry or housing, or indeed the airport. So quite a bit's happened since I last saw you at Christmas. The London Array, which we see sitting out there in the North Sea, was looking to extend northwards to sort of double its capacity. But the good news was that in fact, when they originally did the environmental impact assessments for the array that's there now, they discovered quite a rare bird that breeds in the UK called the red-throated diver, and they come down in the winter and spend all their time exactly out on the spot where they were going to build the wind turbines. So they left that area free and built the array slightly to the south, but then they were looking to see whether they indeed were going to expand north into that, and they decided that they wouldn't because of the environmental value of that part of the ocean. So that was really good news. So the birds have won that particular round. Meanwhile, over on the Hoo Peninsula, Lodge Hill, the big debate about whether to build 5,000 homes on what is now a site of special scientific interest, and that's because more than 1% of the UK's population of nightingales breed there, over 86 pairs, and the nightingales are back this year and singing their hearts out. So that's gone to Medway Council, the outline planning application, and they need to make their minds up in the next few weeks, so we're waiting to hear what their decision will be. If that site was developed and the birds would effectively have to go somewhere else, that would mean a net loss to our nightingales in this country, a bird that's the 9 out of 10 nightingales have gone in my lifetime. That would set a really bad precedent. It would mean anywhere else in the country where you want to build on a site of special scientific interest, they'll just point at the Hoo Peninsula and say, well, Medway Council allowed it there, so why can't we do it here? So although it's a local issue, it has national implications. So we wait to see what happens next. And then, of course, there's the ever-present threat of an airport. Ever since the end of World War II, people have been trying to build an airport up here, and the latest plans, well, they weren't shortlisted. Lord Foster's plans to build on the Hoo Peninsula, which would be chucking aircraft out over the Isle of Sheppey at a rate of knots. I mean, Heathrow, it's one every 90 minutes. At the moment, it would probably be more than that with the 4 runways on Lord Foster's proposal. I see in the news this week, Boris Johnson said that it's environmentally feasible. Well, I'd like to see how, because it's quite apparent to us with the European protection of the marshes here and the Thames estuary, that says you couldn't build an airport there unless you replace the environmental damage, and there's no way you can do that in this country. So it alarms me that Boris is still banging that particular drum when it's simply not true. He also said we must ensure that the final outcome is not one that future generations will regret. Well, I think trashing one of the most valuable environments in this country, the Greater Thames Estuary, which we've already heard tonight, the Nature Improvement Area, designated by another department of the government, recognises its own environmental value. I think the future generation would regret if we then built an airport right in the middle of it, when the need for it being there has not been proven. Now, the Aviation Commission that is looking into this came to visit the marshes back in February, again their second visit, and I had the pleasure of showing them around the Hoo Peninsula, looking across to Sheerness, pointing out what would be destroyed if the airport was built there. Now, the airport's not been shortlisted by them. They're looking at Gatwick and Heathrow, but they have been reassessing the evidence submitted to them by Lord Foster. I think that's all in now, and we hope that they rule it out once and for all. So again, we wait with bated breath to see what the decision is. It would be very disappointing if they decide this late in the day to then shortlist it, really just to try and get through the next elections, and keep Boris quiet. But we'll see what happens. It's always alarming, and we need everyone to continue to fight that particular battle. And Clive Lawrence from Demand for Regeneration in North Kent was debunking a national survey by Medway Council that found that only 1 in 6 people back Boris's plan, and he was saying, well, what relevance is that? They're up in Glasgow and other places. Well, it has every relevance because this is a national issue. This is about the national aviation strategy. It's not just a local thing. So I think it's quite important that only 1 in 6 think Boris's plans make sense. And indeed, when you explain to them that would mean Heathrow has to close, they then became more sceptical about the Foster plans next door to the Isle of Sheppey here. So I think it's, the case is there. It's environmentally vandalism to build in the estuary, and we hope that the Aviation Commission recognise that and all the evidence that's been submitted to them and what they've seen when they came down.
And Rolf, if you're happy we've covered everything, I was hoping you could just go over some of the useful contact details for our listeners.
Yes, indeed. For the Explore North Kent, if you get onto the Medway Swale Estuary Partnership website, that's msep.org.uk, you can download from there the Mudlark little booklet, and that has all the events listed in there. So in particular this week on the Light Vessel 21, at the end of the week, come and join me at RSPB Northwood Hill to walk through the orchards and have the storytelling with Roisin, and lots besides, as I say, in Bluetown especially, and there's a whole day exploring Sheppey as well coming up this week. So look out for that, msep.org.uk. And then the RSPB website, or www.rspb.org.uk, and you can go into the individual reserves to find out what events are coming up there. And again, a really good one. It's a unique opportunity to spend a night camping on one of our nature reserves on the Hoo Peninsula at Northwood Hill. That's on June 13th, so why not check that out? It's called the Big Wild Sleep Out, and you can find all the details for that on the RSPB website and also under reserves for Northwood Hill. Do come and join us. Lots of guided walks, camping on the reserve, and toasting marshmallows around the campfire and cooking up your dinner for the evening. Should be a lot of fun. We did it last year for the first time and it was super. And in terms of the Aviation Commission, you can get onto the government website and you can find the whole aviation interim report there if you want to read the detail and the statistics they've gathered so far on their argument for aviation expansion in the UK. It's actually quite interesting, and it does cover most of the bases there on what's involved in trying to decide if then where you would build an airport and to what scale. And so we will await for their announcements on there as to what their findings are, having looked at the estuary options and whether they'll finally be ruled out or ruled back in. So msep.org.uk and rspb.org.uk.
Well, Rolf, thank you once again for coming back here to BRFM, and hopefully we'll see you again another time as well.
Absolutely, there'll always be some news on wildlife in the area to come back and share with you all.
That is Rolf here this evening, the Communications Officer for the RSPB Swale Kent.